a navigation tab while you might be stuck.
It's my pleasure inviting on stage Mr. Shyam Srinivasan, former MD Federal Bank, Senior Advisor Operating Partners TVS Capital Funds, Mr. Harish Bijur, Brand and Business Strategy Expert, Founder Harish Bijur Consultants, Mr. Suresh Narayanan, former Chairman and Managing Director of Nestle India Limited, and to moderate the session we have the young and dynamic Mangalam Malu, Anchor and Deputy Editor CNBC TV18. Let's welcome all the four gentlemen on stage with a big round of applause. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking your time off today for being with us this evening. You're all excited for the session that's going to come. As they settle down, may I request the AV team to have the AV, please.
Mr. Shyam Srinivasan is a seasoned banking leader who served as MD and CEO of Federal Bank, leading its digital transformation and sustained growth. An IIM Calcutta alumnus, Mr. Shyam now advises portfolio companies at TVS Capital Funds, bringing deep expertise in leadership, technology, and financial services. Mr. Harish Bijur is a leading brand and marketing strategist with deep experience across FMCG, telecom, and consumer durables, advising companies globally through his firm, Harish Bijur Consults Incorporated. A sought-after speaker and faculty member at ISB for over 2 decades, Mr. Harish is widely recognized for his insights on consumer behavior and brand leadership. Mr. Suresh Narayanan is a distinguished FMCG leader with over 30 years of global experience, having served as Chairman and Managing Director of Nestle India and CEO across multiple international markets. An alumnus of the Delhi School of Economics, Mr. Suresh is widely respected for driving growth, transformation, and purpose-led leadership. Mr. Mangalam Malu is an anchor and deputy editor at CNBC TV18, known for his incisive coverage of India's consumer economy across FMCG, retail, e-commerce, and logistics. A CFA charter holder with an MBA in finance, Mr. Malu hosts popular shows including Chartbusters and Halftime Report and is an award-winning business journalist.
Great. Let's applaud them for being here. And I now invite Mr. Mangalam Malu to take the session forward, please.
Yeah. You guys can hear me? Perfect. We stand between you guys and, the high tea. So we try and make it a lot more energetic, and we'll tell you the DNA of the future leader. I can tell you one thing. Between all of them, the kind of experience that they have, the life experience, the leadership experience, the kind of, richness in decisions, the quality and the value that they've created for India, not only for the Indian consumer, but Indians across the world, is just incredible. So a huge round of applause for all these three leaders to come here. You guys can do a little better. All right. So, when I think about leadership and when I think about, having these conversations here, when we look back, the thing is that when you start out as leaders, you don't have this idea of, this is what my leadership style will be, or this is what my legacy would be, etc. All of that is in hindsight. When you start out, it's usually the decisions that you make on a consistent basis, delivering what you have to do. And over a period of time, the quality of those decisions and how they panned out is what sets your leadership apart. So if you could tell us, in your life, in your careers, a few decisions that you all took which at that time felt as just another decision at work. But over a period of time, you realized, they were the ones that were the major pivots or major moving points in your life, so to say, as your leadership developed. Let's start with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to MMA for having us here. Look, if I were to share really 4 learnings from my leadership lesson, firstly is learn to accept accidents because sometimes they can be pleasant. I never set out to be a corporate honcho. I wanted to be a bureaucrat. I was coveting the 3-letter symbol that most people in bureaucracy have. That was what I set out to be. Therefore, my background at the Delhi School of Economics and not IIM Ahmedabad or Bangalore or any of these places. And a company called Hindustan Lever came on campus and decided to make a pitch, and lo and behold, I got recruited. So here I was wanting to be an IAS officer, landing up being a person selling in those days soap and dalda. And in fact, one of the distinguished speakers here, Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan, was my first boss. So, explaining to him how economics was relevant to selling dalda was itself quite a challenge. But that's how it was. That's how it started. So accidents can happen, and therefore, I think just as a crisis doesn't come with a calling card, what has happened ever since then has been a saga in itself. My first leadership lesson was to learn quite simply, and this is something that is part of, there are 2 parts of DNA which I say is important to a person. One is innate DNA, which is what you're born with. That's your family, background, values, and spirit that you're schooling, your parents, your aunts, your grandparents, they teach you. And the other one is what is called infused DNA, which is what the organization brings to bear. And in that context, I think one of the simple lessons that I learned was that you're not alone in this world. Any achievement is done because of people. People don't write the balance sheets, they make the balance sheets. And that's something that we have to remember as leaders, that whatever we are doing is not because of me, the individual, because of us, the collective team. So that was the first experience of shutting down a factory in Ahmedabad in my early 20s, where most of the factory workers who were in their 50s were as old as my dad then. And that was an experience in itself. And one of the highlights of that experience was if you treated them with dignity, with honesty and with transparency, instead of me giving a farewell to the workers actually gave me a farewell. So which will stay with me all my life. The second lesson is that failing to succeed sometimes helps you to succeed. I had in my corporate career in the Unilever Group, one of the brand launches that I made, that I was part of, was a big disaster. And it impacted the Lipton P&L quite significantly in those days. I'm talking about the mid to late 80s. And that's when I realized that leadership is to stand up and be counted. I could have been fired then as one of the many people who should have been fired because of success not happening to us. But instead, the leader of the pack took the rap on himself, which taught me the simple lesson that in a crisis, it is the leader who has to stand up and be counted and who has to do the talking, and not leave it to somebody else in the department and do the work. The third simple lesson that I learned many years later as part of my exposure in the Nestle group to North Africa. And I am one of those people who is a little bit of an albatross. I either fall into a crisis or I create a crisis. That's been some of my career has been evolving in that. Is Jada Vishesham, as they say, so a little bit of that. And there I learned a simple lesson that leaders need to look through the periscope rather than always do rear view mirror driving. Because you are in an alien culture trying to combat an environment that was hostile and that was going through the Arab Spring, so the country had its own motions. And that's when one realized that as a leader, you play a pivotal role of directing the crowd in a particular direction, however fuzzy and however hazy the environment is. rather than trying to dictate every single action of theirs. And that was a lesson in being a leader looking through the periscope rather than through the microscope that made the difference to me. And the fourth important lesson that years has taught me, it is never about you. It is about the issue at hand. I think more often than not, we attach and ascribe personal egos to the problem or the situations we are asked to come upon to solve. And in the consequence of that, we make stupid decisions and foolish decisions which are person-centric or self-centric and not centered around the people and what is good for the people. And I think we had General Chauhan this morning talking about the incident where he stopped the soldiers from firing into a village, despite the fact that some soldiers had been killed from inside that village. I think that takes courage to stand up and be counted and say, look, that decision in a fit of emotion of allowing people to do what they felt like might have also been what you felt, but better judgment has to prevail on you. And those judgments and that ability to look beyond the obvious or to look beyond the immediate nature of the problem helped me in a number of situations. So these would be the 3 or 4 lessons that my journey has taught me on leadership.
I think his leadership lessons has left everyone else speechless, which is exactly why my mic, refused to accept my voice out here. But the way he sets the platform, you have to embrace accidents. You have to ensure that it's not about you. It's the entire organization. It's people. It's more than just one person. The third thing is where, when you are in the crisis, you have to ensure that you take it upon yourself and ensure that your team is protected. And the fourth most important thing, leave your personal battles aside. It is the battle for the issue. I mean, Mr. Srinivasan, you are a big fan of cricket, I know. A great opening batter that he is, he's set the tone for the team. If you could tell us, a couple of shots from your leadership, which you believe have, defined what your idea is.
Thanks. Unlike him, I did want an IAS, not an IAS, I wanted an IIM. So I worked very hard to get it. And I have to tell you a story here. My dear friend Malingam is here. He and I gave the exams at the same time. We were waitlisted. He was 69, I was 70. The bloody rank stopped at 69. He got in, I didn't. I said, I will not give up. I will again give it. So the succeeding year, I went to IIM, following him he was my senior on campus that year, right? But anyway, jokes aside, for me, very early wanting to be I'm not saying a leader, but wanting to be in the management space and having, I think the earlier speakers had a joke on engineering, right? To become a chef, study engineering, to do this, study engineering. I became a leader by studying engineering, but never practicing one. But I think the point is, if you want something, if you obsess about it, invariably it comes. And I'm not trying to be alchemist, but I'm just saying that manifestation does happen. And of course, I think always life is understood backwards. So having had the privilege of working and being a leader for many years, now I'm trying to give it structure, and hopefully that's valuable for other younger aspiring leaders. One thing that I've always followed, and now I'm coining it as being happily dissatisfied. I do want to encourage a crazy amount of positive restlessness. Right? In the teams that I worked with, I've always encouraged, please remove words like good, satisfied, comfortable, all from your dictionary. It has no meaning. The moment you're doing that, good is the enemy of great, as Jim Collins said, right? So the moment you start with that, say I'm doing good, or this is enough, or I'm comfortable, I think you're beginning to build your graveyard. So in hindsight, I'm not saying that's how I began, but I do believe being restless positively, sort of a constructive anxiety to be one level above, influences how you behave and how you are sort of able to move. And this is not about personal greed. I think I concur with Suresh, it's never about us. But these are easy to say after 30, 40 years of working, taking the scratches, as Mr. Chauhan would say, you've had the bullets on your face, so you have the scars to show. But when the scar is going to happen, you're thinking about yourself. But I think that moment where you can distance yourself and rise above it is when your leader in you is born. So that is what I would encourage, and I see a lot of our younger colleagues here. That moment and that awareness is trained awareness. You have to create intuition to come by virtue of the practice and the experiences. And sessions like this or talking to many can help that. If there was one thing I look back and say, did I learn more from studying or learn more from experiences of myself or others? The answer is obviously the second, right? We learn what we do in the first 20, 25 years of academics is good, but I think the next 30, 40 years or the years that you work, it's just incredible. So hindsight teaches me about being restless, about not giving up, about taking chances where most people don't want to. I mentioned I want to be in management, I wanted to be in a bank. I did not get into a bank on my right out of IIM. I went to sell computers, and then I said, no, I'm not giving up. I went into Citibank, and then, God was kind and things moved well. But it's all along that obsession to move one restlessly, in some direction which sort of excites you. And invariably you end getting it because that restlessness creates energy that is supported by, the ecosystem. So yeah, that's what I would say. Mike doesn't listen to you, Mangalam. This is not CNBC.
I don't think the mic needs to listen to me here. I have the easiest job on the panel of just keeping quiet and listen to all you guys speak out here. But, Mr. Bijur, your experience among all of them is the most interesting one because you've experienced leadership at organizations. You were at Unilever, thereafter the Tatas, and now you are experiencing leadership through what you're doing as well, and you are seeing it across organizations. What are the few things that you can speak from your experience and your experience through consulting every leader here? 4 or 5 things that codify a leader which makes him or her timeless.
See, Mangalam, first of all, it's an absolute pleasure being here with you and in the midst of these two titans, both of whom I admire. I'm going to say that, my leadership lessons started early, when I started work, when I first got out of campus and started work. It's crazy. I've known Suresh for a while, but I didn't know we had so much in common because, I also wanted to be an IAS officer, nothing but an IAS officer. But it so happened that my rank wasn't good, so I got into the Indian Audit and Accounts Service, 1 additional A added to it, and I didn't take it. So eventually I landed up by accident, Suresh was possibly selling dalda, but I was selling red label tea in the bylanes of Bengaluru. Very embarrassed because, I had some of my classmates driving up in their nice snazzy cars and I would be selling tea and I would hide, when I was actually billing because as a group management trainee, you had to do a stint of a full year and you had to be selling tea with a van man who would actually load the van and he'd pull the van by hand and you have to take care of stock and then you have to do billing. You have to work 35 shops minimum every single day, collect the cash, go hide it in the depot and then bank it the next day. Now, a lot of leadership comes from the grassroots upwards for me, And I think, one of the first lessons that I learned was inclusive leadership, being inclusive. In fact, it was taught to me very, very subliminally. We had a corporate office in Bangalore and in Bengaluru, what is today Bengaluru. We had a corporate office, which was in Bengaluru. We had a very nice, snazzy office put together. And incidentally, it so happened that it had 3 restrooms on every floor, on every executive. So one said men, the second said women, and the third said executives. So executives meant, what, whereas which meant that executives were not men or women, or whatever it means. And that was the first thing that told me that, hey, listen, this is the way things are done. But when I got out of corporate office and went to my area sales office, and I was an ASM in Chennai for a while, and N numbers of other places, I decided that we must not have these distinctions between one human being and another. Okay, today it's very fashionable to say that this is the way it's done, but I'm talking 30 years ago here. In those years, people were very, very conscious about hierarchy, the way things were done, etc. So one of the things I said was, I mustn't do what we do. And I kept looking out at the grassroots level to say all the wrongs that we typically do in management. Now, we have many organizations which believe in discipline. Half the time, this discipline is imposed discipline by a certain culture which comes top down, which is most of the time Western. And I've always worked for Western companies. A multinational corporation is a multinational corporation. And a multinational corporation brings with it a set of MNC views. And in the olden days, they used to be quite rigid. So I think that is a part of leadership that came to me very strongly. Now, second part of the question, to answer, I would simply say that, hey, I think we are in the Kalyug of leadership at this point of time. My mother keeps saying all the time, Kali Yuga, whenever something goes wrong, And I think we're in the Kali Yuga of leadership to the extent that I think leadership exists in certain organizations, which is reasonably positive. And in n numbers of organizations, leadership is quite toxic, convoluted, and something which, is not such a happy leadership as we make it out to be. There could be a clutch of about 16 to 18 companies in India, which are mostly global companies, who believe in true blue leadership of a particular decent, straightforward kind. Now that's missing. So this toxic leadership needs to change. And I think this is the Kali Yuga of leadership. I think the Kalki Yuga of leadership is ahead. Okay. And when I look at Kalki Yuga, I wrote a paper on this recently called the Kalki Yuga of leadership. What's the meaning of that? It simply means to say that the Kalki Yuga is an undoing of the Kali Yuga. The Kali Yuga, the Black Age. And if you really look at the Kalki Purana in particular, you will see that, there is this new age of leadership which will emerge. And it's fascinating to read the Kalki Purana. I would insist that, if you can, it's a beautiful way of looking at leadership. It says, this leader is a guy who is riding a white horse. And this white horse for me today is not a horse, it's a horse with one unicorn. It's more of a unicorn. And incidentally, it's that unicorn. And there's a blazing, sword which he's holding. And that blazing sword is of one of knowledge, which actually is about intelligence. It actually says intelligence in the Kalki Purana. The only thing is it's artificial intelligence. So this is the unicorn, artificial intelligence. All of this is the future of leadership. Because, I think leadership must be fair. Leadership must be unbiased. Unfortunately, human beings are not fair. Human beings are not unbiased. Machines can be fair. Machines can be unbiased. The digits can be unbiased. AI leadership is the new leadership, or AI-enabled leadership is the new leadership that I talk about. And today, within the startups that I really look at, all this is falling into place here. HR departments are getting revamped altogether. AI agent-managed relationships is the truth. So in the old days, we'd be totally governed by AI as an assistant, right? Now the AI is not an assistant. AI is my colleague, works along with me. And now in the future, the AI is my boss. And eventually, sentient AI, the moment we are able to experiment with it in a more reasonable manner, is the new AI of the HR manager is dead. It's not the human resources manager. It's the machine resources manager. And by the way, it's crazy, but 18 years ago when I came to the MMA, I think that's when we had spoken about the same subject, saying HRM is going to become machine resource manager, and today it's the machine resource manager. I think superior management comes through, neutral management. Yep.
Superior management comes through neutral management. So this is a perfect, batting lineup, so to say. He set the stage up fairly well, and then he came back, hit a few shots as well, and then towards the end of the innings, he just came out, whacked a few out of the park, and all in all, the team has a good total now. The point is,
over now.
It's a super over, as it was this afternoon as well. But, now let's talk about a couple of difficult things about leadership. Like he said, he raised a few pertinent points. It's very easy to say all the positive things about leadership while you are, at a panel like this, and when you have the benefit of, hindsight of having led companies for 30 to 40 years, etc. But what he said also had an important point that beyond the top 17, 18 companies where leadership is genuinely good, there is a fair amount of toxicity, there is a lot of negativity, there is a lot of, individualism when it comes to leaders. And we see that across generations, be it the yesteryear's Babu or be it the current year's, new age founders who think that they are the be-alls and know-alls of everything. So how do you cultivate humility and how do you cultivate the next batch of leaders who will obviously think beyond themselves and be a lot more inclusive and be a lot more positive as against toxic or negative?
Look, that's a very, it's a very potent question, Mangalam, and I would like to keep the answer relatively short. I think it's been said many, many years ago, more than 50, 60 years ago by Peter Drucker that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think in this day and age, which is that of fractured relationships, fractured global environment, fractured organization, and as my friend Harish said, toxic leadership, I think culture is eating strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In fact, all the meals are being devoured by it. And what does it take to build culture? And culture is a subject that is not discovered and not discussed enough in the boardrooms and in the corporate because it's a soft aspect. We have all got used to KPIs and strategies and directions and outcomes. But we have not got used to the fact that there is a method to the madness and there is a way in which we approach the problem and how we do the thing. Culture, in my view, has got a simple definition. Culture is the language that is spoken when no one is watching. That's what defines the culture of the organization. So what the last man in the field or the front end, how they behave is the way in which the culture of the organization is. And there are 4 elements that go to build a culture in my view. I've been a passionate advocate of culture. I believe that I've been blessed to have a career where compassion, where empathy, where respect, where dignity, where pride, where humility and hard work led to results and not necessarily being toxic and difficult and brutal at all points in time. The first important lesson that a leader imparts to culture is courage. Courage is the least mentioned and least available ability in political life, in social life, and in corporate world. Nobody has the courage to stand up to the convictions and nobody has the courage to stand up to a difficult situation. It's easy to pass the buck. The world is moving around, people blaming each other for why the sun is rising the way it is and why pollution is happening and why this is happening and that is happening. But courage is not happening. So courage is number 1. Number 2 is competence. I think competence in this context means sequential and situational and relevant to the organization not only today but also for tomorrow. The third is communication and coherence. A lot of strategies in companies become so convoluted that only probably a few board members understand it. It is put up on the boardroom, it is put up in probably the reception, but nobody else seems to understand it. So communication means the clarity and the simplicity and the transparency of what is being sought. What are the values of this company? Is it honesty? Is it respect? Is it humility? How does the leader and the leadership team translate this into action? To me, the chairman of the company and the coffee boy are exactly the same respect and the same dignity that they deserve. I have to practice it. And I think in the morning there was a discussion around how you interact with the people below you and interact with, I think Mr. Gopalakrishnan talked about it. I had a habit in the Nestle office, much annoyingly to my colleagues. I used to walk the floors every single day. Every single day. I used to walk the floor when I was in the office, not only selfishly to cover my 10,000 steps, but also, more importantly, to talk to people. What is happening? What is the issue? Sense a few things, including things like sensing office romances, right? You're able to figure that out when you are walking around and say, there is something brewing here. So I think the ability to embed and follow the culture, and the last is consequences. A culture has consequences. If people go out of line and they behave in a manner that is dissonant with the culture of the company, whatever be the culture of the company, there has to be some punitive action. More often than not, what we do, we say, oh, he's a high performer. He is a toxic high performer and a corrosive high performer, but he's a high performer. So he must exist in the organization. Organizations must take a hard look, especially as you're getting into more difficult waters and into more technologically challenging waters, on whether to accept a lousy culture and outstanding competence, or an outstanding culture and a average to outstanding competence. I think these choices need to be made as far as organizations are concerned.
That'll be very interesting in this marketplace where, you know, PEs are decided by a couple of 100 basis points increase in margins as against, you know, cultures. Unfortunately, we are yet to develop a model where, you know, culture can be codified into the valuation of a company as well immediately. But you have something in common with Mr. Srinivasan when you said you had a sense of finding out whether there were office romances as well. In Mr. Srinivasan's case, he could find out whether there were romances in other offices as well by just virtue of watching the television. That's where he saw me and Sonal being married, and he called our managing editor and said, oh, these two anchors on your channel, I think they are married. But, you know, that story for another day. Mr. Srinivasan.
Yeah, that makes me sound like a nosy Parker.
No, just kidding. But, you know, we were talking about how in our experience, leaders who take their work very seriously, but not themselves very seriously, are known to be ones that rise above and beyond the others in that clutter or in that league. How do you teach that? Is that something which is innate? Is that something which can be taught? And if it can be taught, what can people who are watching right now or should do to instill that in themselves?
Yeah, I'm firmly of the view that experience and behavior of the leadership sets the tone of any organization, right? Any amount of PowerPoint, vision statements only mean that much. And I go back to what you said, culture compounds, right? Personally, and it's worked for me, and I'm guessing it's not done badly, I go with what Suresh was mentioning, that walking the floors. Sometimes, if you are not endowed with all the knowledge and all the skills, actually it's an advantage. I never claim to know everything, even today, but I was open, or many of us who have been reasonably successful in leadership have to have both the humility and the wisdom to understand you don't know it all. In fact, you don't know it all. But the collective community knows a lot. How do you walk about, talk about, convert, content, and synthesis? The leadership is about synthesis and giving credit where it is due and not assuming it for yourself is a brilliant format, because then you are ensuring that the people who have contributed get the benefit and the institution gets the benefit of collective wisdom. And I think it's proven across time. On the point about culture does not get value, I'm increasingly of the view the world is recognizing it, right? We've seen it. I mean, if just the industry that I was so closely linked to, banking, we've seen some superstar performers who suddenly went up from 20 rupees share price to 700 rupees and came back to 100 rupees and struggling, right? And there have been companies which have 20, 40, 60, 80 and are compounding nicely, and time is a great leveler, and we've seen that happen. So I think increasingly people are putting a premium on integrity, culture and quality. I don't believe we don't have to wait for another day. I think that day has arrived. Of course, this is evolving. The other and equally important part is, which you mentioned, Suresh, is the communication. And it is not just expounding some vision statements, it's the frequency, consistency and the ability to stay the course and say the same things, which is usually very boring, but make it sexy. And I mean, not to show off, but there is not a single Sunday that I missed in my term as a leader that I did not write to all my employees. Every employee received a short, maybe 10 sentences, 20 sentences, nothing about the world banking. I saw a movie last night and what I learned from it. It could be anything. but it ensured that the chain in the organization was informed of the same thing, were involved, engaged, and it cut the level of the organization, flattened the organization. Anybody could write to me. So the ability for an organization to stay true to what it seeks to achieve is possible, and the institutional sort of, again, to go back to the culture, eat strategy for breakfast, I have the other one is feedback is the breakfast of champions, right? If you are constantly listening to the field and whatever that hierarchy is, lot breaks. And in the new age, and since our topic is about DNA of the future leader, the biggest thing that is changing right in front of us, and I'm not talking 20, 30, 35, I'm talking of today, hierarchies are breaking, right? Nobody today wants to live the way we lived. There's you mentioned executives. It's so flat now.
Yeah.
Right? And the 60-year-old leader talking to a 20-year-old in the same language is what probably is the timelessness of leadership. How do I appeal to that community and stay relevant? Because their attention span is low. They don't respect your badge. They respect your knowledge, if at all. And if you're not adding value, thank you very much. And so how does the leader stay as relevant for that audience? Learning from them, giving it back to them, maybe repackaged with wisdom. That is the art of all of us, hopefully being effective for that community of workforce.
And Harish, how do you create this ecosystem around leaders where they are, open to feedback, they are open to criticism, they are open to someone telling them that, the sun does not rise from where you wake up?
Oh, this is a very difficult thing, Mangalam, because there are leaders far and few who can keep their ego aside. Bulk of the time, it's the ego that doesn't allow people to listen. So one of the biggest things that's very, very important is the ability for a leader to listen. It's so lovely to hear this management by walking about, and this business of, writing a missive on a Sunday to every employee without missing a week. This is communication. This is very, very important. And that communication must not come top down. It must be level. And, communication is very important. You have to learn from the political leaders of the day. Man ki baat. It's a classic way of communication. And that communication goes into the remotest corner of this country, as far as PM Modi is concerned. Now, please listen. The more you communicate, the more you tend to open yourself up to the entire audience you're talking to. The second issue is this business of older leaders versus younger leaders. I face this in every environment that I work in today. I do a fair bit of work within the startup ecosystem across the country because that's the most robust ecosystem today. And that's the ecosystem that wants learning to come in from outside. What happens is young people think very, very differently, whereas older people think very, very, very differently. And attitudes to various things are very varied, and therefore, there could be an older person who says that I want you to work 72 hours a week. And there could be a younger person who says that, to hell with it, I will not work 30 hours a week. And if you ask me to do such things, I will troll you no end. Both are right. 72 hours is something great to work. 30 hours is also great because the balance of life, etc., etc. And particularly if you look at, the fact that Europe works in a particular manner, we need to be careful. The thing is, the twain does not meet. The oldies think like the oldies, the youngies think like the youngies, the twain does not meet. Now, making it meet is a very difficult thing. So, whose role is it to make that meet? It's actually the role of the older generation to make it meet, not the role of the younger generation. And therefore, leaders must not age. Leaders must not talk their age. Leaders must think 20 years less than their age. That's a very important thing for me within organizations. There are some leaders who pretend that they think like 20 years less than their age. That's not on. You must not only, you mustn't pretend. Because one of the cornerstones of good leadership is integrity. One of the cornerstones of good leadership is the fact that you be you. And you communicate and there is no double talk, double speak. And I think, we must appreciate that everybody who works within our organizations is very intelligent, and more importantly, very intuitive. So that intelligence and intuitiveness, they recognize you within 3 days of meeting you, full stop. The senior leader is assessed, understood, and denigrated if necessary within 3 days. So you lost the battle in 3 days. Leaders who don't lose the battle, like let's say current company around us, I mean, are guys who have reinvented themselves again and again and again with tools and with various kinds of ways and means of doing it. Somebody's walking around the office, somebody's spotting office romances. Suresh, I didn't know this skill of yours. And somebody is communicating on a Sunday, talking all kinds of things. Somebody is sending out whose romance is going on CNBC, stuff like that.
So, it's insightful. And of all the things that you're saying, I'm also, while the leaders are keeping an eye out on themselves, I'm watching the clock because strategy eats culture for breakfast. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. Audience eats panel discussions for high tea. So
I want to add one more, which we recently heard, saying that if you're not at the table, you are the breakfast. You are the meal. Okay. And this is Carney's statement at Davos. I mean, he quoted someone else.
Yeah.
But that's so true. If you're not at the table, you are the meal. My problem is a lot of young people think they're not at the table and therefore they are the meal. So watch out for that.
we will. And we'll try to keep this rapid now. Quick 1 or 2 word answers from you all on a whole host of things. The thing that you learned from your leaders to never do.
To never do.
Yeah. I mean, leaders teach you, bad leaders also teach you what not to be, right? So
I think from the bad leaders, actually, I learned a lot.
exactly.
Even more than from the good leaders. And from the bad leaders, I learned how toxicity kills.
How toxicity kills.
And how to be polite and to be respectful is a very powerful tool. You don't have to show your stars and stripes to show who you are. I think being non-toxic is itself a learning in itself.
All right.
Never talk behind anyone who's left the room. That's
Never.
a big learning for me because the moment that happens, you know who the character of the individual. Yeah.
I think for me, the guts to be patient. It takes a lot of guts to be patient in an institution, particularly if you're an institution builder.
Yes.
Because if you're a listed entity, every 3 months or every day, but every 3 months the scorecard is up. The analysts and the investors are finishing you off. You need to build an ecosystem that trusts you and backs you as a leader, right? Which is the toughest part. I mean, I was blessed with a board that stayed with me. There have been quarters where on my face, why are you in this job? You should be out of this job. I'm sure every leader, particularly in a listed entity, they're going to be faced. You need the guts to stay, provided you have the integrity and the authenticity to hold that core. And we've not spoken about authenticity. I think it is the signature of everything, right? If you are not yourself, everybody else is taken. If you're not yourself, walk away. If you can't be that, so I would think the guts to hold course, of course, not arrogantly or stubbornly, but if you sort of built a good construct, the ability to hold, that I think is paramount.
All right. The darkest day for you as a leader, something that you felt that, oh, I could have done so much better on this.
I think it was during COVID when I lost almost half a dozen of my people in a week. I mean, that was when I really felt completely helpless. I said, despite being the head of a large company, I could not save the lives of people to COVID. That was my darkest day.
How about you?
I'm still thinking. I don't have an answer. It's such a good question. Still thinking.
For me, I mean, other than COVID, I used to live in Cochin, right? In 2018, August 16th was the flood of the century. My house got washed away. So me and my wife were displaced from home. But that actually was the lesser part. Like him, the whole city got washed out, as was our headquarters. So we had to make sure the business bounces back. people, including my house, was floating out and content was going away. And employees, just like us, were suffering with so many things. They had to bring back everything with the least interruption. It was tough, but I think it was, I wouldn't say dark. I mean, it was obviously a dark outcome, but luck even. But I think the comeback was the most satisfying part. Within 48 hours, we were back in business. Life was okay. I think crisis brings people together in a manner that none of us can visualize, right? I
Who
mean,
better than Suresh would know?
yeah, he would know that. I still remember his interview when he joined Nestle when the Maggie issue was, and it's such a sensitive topic. But yeah, so I think crisis, the way it comes out, as it happens, of course, is atrocious. And personally, I knew my home was getting washed out, but we had other things to do.
Right?
Well, I think for me it was a very personal one. Day on which I had to sack someone who was reporting into me, one of my best employees and a very senior employee, for reasons which were related to integrity issues. And to think that I was shocked at the fact that I had known the guy for 21 years and he had worked with me for, not directly, but under me at various points of time, and yet I did not know that guy. So that, humbles you to say that you think you know everybody, but you don't know everybody. And sacking that guy was a sad day for me, but I think it was the right day. Yeah.
Right. If the leader of the future had to have one quality from Suresh Narayanan, what would that be?
Being authentic.
Yeah, totally. You be you. That's the new language of the young.
You be
They tell
you.
you be you. You know, my son came up to me and said, you be you. I've always thought I'm always I. But he says, you be you, I be I. And I think that's very important. Let the young be them and let the oldies be them.
He sounds like Swami Nityananda. But yeah, I mean, I would agree, authentic, but I would add empathy. Empathy.
Empathy. And since everyone is talking artificial intelligence, etc., we're trying to code the leader, the future leader of 2035. If you had to give a prompt, what would that prompt be?
Ample intelligence, not just artificial intelligence.
Ample intelligence is what one has to have.
Kalki Yug intelligence
Kalki
with,
Yug
with
intelligence.
Devadatta. Devadatta is that horse, the unicorn.
Be restless, better never stops.
And I think a longer version is coming on LinkedIn this Sunday.
I've
Right.
already written about it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wonderfully insightful discussion about what leadership looks like in 2035 through a lens of such expertise on the panel. And there are some questions as well. We have one coming in from Yugesh. Mr. Sham Srinivasan, in your view, how must leadership evolve when managing organizations in a highly regulated sector like financial services amid rapid technological change? That's important.
I say I'm not trying to sort of simplify it, but I think this hype about technology changes everything will make it difficult. I would argue that the other way. Many of us in this room who started out in the 80s, 90s, whatever, we've heard the same thing, right? Change, technology, these are constant buzzwords. So I won't get too stressed by it. I would think the biggest challenge for leaders of today and tomorrow is how do you be decisive in an era when there is a deluge of data? How do we make sure that you make decisions through that phase? And invariably we get into this analysis paralysis. You want 100% information to make a decision, but the time would pass. So my answer to this question is, it's 60-70% information. If the time is right, make that call. The decisive call that a leader makes with broadly the right set of information makes the case for being a successful leader, as opposed to getting into a severely analytic, paralytic situation, trying to synthesize 10,000 points of data to get an outcome, but the time has already passed. So that would be my answer to this question.
Making a decision is always better than waiting for data. And obviously, what Amazon's Jeff Bezos said, that it's far easier for me to focus on things which are not going to change than to worry about things that are going to change. Customers are always going to want products faster. Customers are always going to want products cheaper. Customers are always wanting to, get their product easily on the website. So if I keep focusing on all those things, so Obviously, from a financial services standpoint, people are going to want all these things better at lower costs. And for him, it has to be a lot more safe when it comes to lending than anything else. There's another question that's come from Mr. Bijur. In a world flooded with data and metrics, can leaders ensure that human intuition and empathy remain central to decision making? Netflix has this gut philosophy where you go with your gut, then back it with data, but eventually you leave it to the gut. How do you do that?
Yeah, I think this will continue for a period of time where decision making, decision taking, intuition, etc. is going to be important, and it's going to be dealt with by the human being. But I don't give it too many years, in the sense that I know I'm no Cassandra, but I'm just saying that, even that will go. With sentient AI, you're going to have decision making which is going to get out of our hands as well. And so expect it, yeah. Don't say that it will never happen. Youngsters in particular must be careful about it. Because you need to ensure that all the mundane work is going out of your hands. So you need to upskill and reskill and cross-skill to ensure that you are handling the better pieces of work. Working with your mind is a very, very important thing for you to understand, because thus far youngsters were only trained to work with their fingers. Repetitive stress injuries, etc., routine coding work and stuff like that. So I think things are changing today. So we need a lot more thinkers coming out of our engineering institutes today. And the moment you got out of your engineering college, you must insist that there needs to be a yin and yang in your work. The yin must be maybe a 40% thinking and a 60% actual working. Now that used to happen only in senior leadership in the old days. Now that time doesn't exist. You have to start thinking earlier in your career, not later in your career.
That's a very fair point, and the old saying that the illiterate of the future will not be the ones who can't read or write, but the ones who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. Final question to you, Mr. Narayanan. Having led across diverse geographies during volatile times, what leadership principles helped you navigate uncertainty without losing organizational purpose? I think the best for the last.
I think I have developed the reputation of being a somber horse rather than a happy horse. Having been in different situations, I think I have 5 very simple principles that I've used in any situation, in a crisis or even in a normal time. Number 1 is courage. Courage to stand up to whatever needs to be stood up to. Number 2 is compassion. I have never abjured compassion in the place of anything else. Compassion comes one of the top and most important emotion for me. Number 3 is collaboration. I think the leader must have the humility to realize that you are not the person who moves everything. I have this famous I'm very fond of dohas of Kabir, so pardon my saying this in Hindi and then translating it into English. जब मैं था तब हरि नहीं, अब हरि हैं मैं नाही, सब अंधियारा मिट गया जब दीपक देखे माही. When I was there, ego was there was no God. Today there is God and I has vanished. I think the humility comes from being able to collaborate with people. Number 4 is confluence, which is the ability to get things done, to get things going, to achieve what needs to be achieved. And number 5, and the least important, is competence. I think I go back to the point that Shyam said, we don't need to know everything about everything as leaders. We are like orchestra conductors. We know the music, we know the instruments, and yet we don't make a sound. The sound is made by the orchestra. I think these are the principles that I have tried to use.
I don't think I need to say anything after that. I'll just put the mic down.
Thank you, Mangalam. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a fabulous session. You'll all agree with me. End of the day, it's been a lot of takeaways for us, particularly from this session, I would say. May I request now Mr. Unikrishnan, Senior Vice President, MMA, Mr. Malingam, Past President, MMA, and also Mr. Annadurai to join us on the stage to give away the memento to the guest speakers of the last session, please. You'll all agree with me, the last session was as if we were watching a show on CNBC. So, Mangalam, I think you moderated those, so just as only an anchor can do it. Thank you so much. It's been a fabulous session. We got the best out of all these very, very experienced industry people, and that was really nice. Yeah, let's give them all a big round of applause as they post. And a special one for Mangalam. Thank you, Mangalam, for being here, flying all the way to be with us this evening and to moderate this session. Please come forward. So meanwhile, let me remind you all that there is a QR code for us, for all of you to give us the feedback about the entire convention. We'll be happy if you could do that even before you leave this hall. But otherwise, please do it when you reach home if you're not able to do it right now. On the back side of the program sheet, you have the QR code. Just another 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, please let's wait and then move out of the hall. We've had an excellent day throughout the day. Let's end it up with a good word of thanks and then followed by a national anthem before you leave. Please hold on for a few minutes. May I request Mr. Sitharaman to come on to the dais to propose the formal word of thanks. May I have the AV of Mr. Sitharaman, please.
Mr. S. Sitarman is the chairman of Super Auto Forge Private Limited and a pioneering entrepreneur who introduced cold forging technology for auto components in India. Founder of SAF in 1974, Mr. Sitarman has built it into India's largest exporter of forged steel and aluminium auto parts and now serves as mentor to the next generation while actively supporting social causes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been my pleasure to be proposing a word of thanks. We were lucky throughout the day to listen to some very eminent personalities, great managers, researchers, and a lot to learn as we heard very patiently to them. And I wish to thank all of them to have spared their time, come over here and give their experience and thoughts on management and other subjects. Very, very much thankful to them. McKinsey and Company has designed and conceptualized this event and put together the whole program, and as a knowledge partner, I sincerely thank them for the same. Conventions of magnitude and stature can only be organized with the support of industries and sponsors. We acknowledge the support that they have given for this event. And the sponsors' names have been displayed on both sides of the podium. But for them, it would have been very difficult to have organized an event of this size. I thank MMA Management Committee headed by Lakshmi Narayan, President, Unnikan Krishnan, the Convention Chairman, and committee members and other members to have actively worked and cooperated to have made this a great success. Thanks for them. I also thank all our past presidents and past members who have actively participated today. Finally, I thank the MMA Secretariat headed by Group Captain Vijay Kumar and his team for their unstinted support and excellent work in making this convention grand success, as I've always been doing. It's a great work done by them. I once again thank every one of you to have made this occasion a great occasion. Thank you, and I request everybody to rise for the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्जल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us the entire day. And all the viewers watching us online, over 1,100 viewers have been watching us online. Thank you for being with us the entire day. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a cup of tea before we depart. Thanks a lot until we meet again.